Jesse Cardinal Netsigasun Kikino Tsenia. I'm Jesse Cardinal. I'm currently serving as the Executive Director for Keepers of the Water. Keepers of the Water is an Indigenous-led organization that works to protect water. It was formed in 2006. And at that time, what was happening in 2006 was there was a lot of industrial extraction happening. And people along the rivers, there was a lot of industrial extraction happening on the Peace River, on the Athabasca River, the Slave River, and all of those rivers flow into Northwest Territories. And they had a water gathering in 2006 to bring people together to talk about the water, because the Indigenous people especially were noticing that the levels of the water were dropping, but also the quality of the water was declining. We were hearing back then that there was a lot of, like how they were noticing was the muskrats were very rapidly declining. And so they had this water gathering, and they brought together Indigenous people, non-Indigenous people. And at that time, they made a declaration. And the declaration at that time stated that water is sacred and that we must work to protect it. And so that's how Keepers of the Water came to be. I've been with Keepers since about 2009. And I started out volunteering. I was working actually for the provincial government at the time as a career counselor. So I was already concerned about water in my own community, and then I found this Keepers of the Water. I went to the first gathering because we try to have gatherings every year. So in 2009, I think it was, they had a gathering in Fort Chip. And that's the first gathering I went to. And I was just overwhelmed that there was so many people from all over the world that were concerned about water, because I live in Kikino, and I had been talking about water in my own community since I was in my 20s. Like, I would see that land was being cleared, that gas wells were being put up, that are, I would see the water starting to disappear. And I was also concerned about our lake. And nobody was talking about stuff like that in my community back then. And it felt very lonely. And so when I went to this Keepers of the Water gathering, and there was people from all over the world, from all walks of life that were there to talk about water, I actually cried. It was so overwhelming for me because I had felt so alone in my own community. And then to see, like, I'm not alone. There's people all over that care about the water. And so that's how I got to be involved with Keepers of the Water. And it's just been such an amazing journey to meet so many people from all walks of life, so many Indigenous people on the front lines protecting water. Like, they see the world the way I see it, like the same worldview, that understanding that we're all connected. Like, we cannot exist without water. Like, we have to take care of water, and water has a spirit. And, and so I see all these Indigenous people even today, like Winona LaDuke. Like, I get it, I get it. And I know that it's not easy to be her. It's just like, it's not easy to be me. I would love to, like, not care and just, be playing ball and drinking beer, because it seems like those people just don't have worries. And I'm like, how come I have these worries on my shoulders and nobody else is caring about it, and I know that it's not something you choose, but what frustrates me is that we need more people to care about the water. Like, we're in a climate crisis right now. The heat waves that we had this summer, they have been unprecedented. It made our lakes, our streams were drying out, our sloughs were drying out, our wetlands were drying out, fish were dying in all the lakes in Alberta. And people are like, oh, that's just from the heat. And it's like, no, we gotta address these issues, and we have to talk about them, and we have to plan. What if we can't drink water from the lake? Where are we going to get our water from? And then that we're starting to look at underground water sources. But what's happened in Alberta is that the industries, they found all the underground water rivers and all the underground water streams. So they've been tapping into them. So they've been taking fresh water from underground, which is also contributing to the issues we're seeing of like lakes running dry, sloughs running dry, streams running dry. And I'm telling people, because I've been traveling around communities for over a decade talking about water. And I'm telling people, like, we're in a water crisis. You know, like, it's become so normalized for people to buy bottled water, but that's not normal. That's how far removed we've become from the land and the water. And so when I tell people, I'm like, what should be normal is for us to be able to go right to the lake and drink from the lake. Like, we need to start thinking that way instead of just accepting, oh, our lakes are dying or we can't drink water without treating it. We should fight for clean water. We should say, no, I want to be able to go to the stream and just drink from the stream. You know, like, so that's kind of where I'm starting to like take the conversations in communities, is because, you know, my grandma, who passed away in 2018, they were 2 generations ahead of me. So when they were kids, they just drank from they didn't have treated water. That wasn't a thing. Treated water actually didn't become a thing till I was a kid. So even my parents' generation didn't drink treated water. You can feel water, you can talk to water. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking out my window and there's a stream that goes through, and then there's a lake, and I don't know, it's really hard to explain. Like, it's just that you know that when you know that water gives you life and you learn to respect it, because it's like there's so much that lives in water, you know, so it's all a part of that spirit to me. It's like fish live in there, minnows, bugs, birds, like everything is connected to water. So when you sit there, if you're sitting at a lake, you'll see the geese come and land on the water, you know, and they're eating and they're swimming and they're taking care of their babies. They lay their eggs near the water. Then you see the ducks and you see all of these water birds. They all come to the water, you know, and it's like, it's almost like the water is there. It's like everything communicates. It's not only just water, like the leaves communicate, the sky communicates, like the wind. All the animals, everything is communicating all the time, and water is also communicating. And so it's a part of our ecosystem. So that's what I tell people. I said, when, you know, if you see a lake and it's dying, we're a part of that ecosystem. We depend on that water to keep us alive. So if that water's getting sick, we're getting sick. The animals are getting sick. Like, everything depends on water. Everything depends. So if you have a lake in the middle of the bush, moose are drinking from it. Deer are drinking from it. Fox, raccoons, like every living animal needs that water to survive. The plants need the water. Many medicines grow around the water. Weegeese, which we know, radroot, like that's one of the more common known medicines. It's amazing. Like, it really is an amazing medicine. It will cure you. Like, it helps heal you. Like, when you're sick, like there's nothing that can replace that medicine to help make you feel better when you need it. And those are the kinds of medicines that grow around the water. So it's just like, it's just amazing how much life water gives. And if there's no water, there's like nothing. There's nothing. There's no us, there's no animals. Because people think, well, I don't know what people think, but I think at one time people thought that they can control things. So they'll control where the water goes or who gets the water, you know, and now they're seeing that they can't control water because they're saying, well, we could live without moose, deer. We don't need all these wild animals. We have cows, you know, and it's like, those ecosystems are collapsing from climate change right now. Like, you can't have big herds of cattle. Farmers are selling out their cattle right now because of drought, because they need cows drink so much water. So that's, yeah, like I can't really like explain the spirit of water. I just know that water is in us, you know, like it's everywhere. Well, it goes back to the history of who we are. So as a Métis person, our history is land-based. So we've never been city people. So before colonization happened, you know, my Cree ancestors were like completely land-based people. And it just is a testament to how civilized and advanced we were as people, because everything was clean. The water was clean. There was no pollution. Like we've heard these things, right? Like there was no starvation. There was so many animals, medicines, everything. And there were like laws and systems and orders. And then when colonization started happening and, you know, the white people came, and then you start to have the mixed breed, they were still very land-based people. So the white, like, people have heard the story where these fur traders came, or these white people came, and they didn't know how to survive. And the indigenous people opened up their arms because we're kind people. You know, that's our first, the first Cree law is love. And so with extended arms, you know, helping these people survive. And then, so the Métis culture was very, when I talked to elders, like the Cree elders, they said there was no like Cree and Métis. It was just, we were all the same. We were all living on the land. We were all hunting. We were all fishing, you know, trapping, harvesting, that kind of stuff. And it was through the white people that started making these separations. Well, you're Métis, you're this, you're that, you know, you got to live in this plot of land. And that's colonization, right? Like they started separating people and placing people on plots of land. So for my history, what happened was the Métis originally settled in Manitoba. And then they were, you know, land-based people. It's kind of, they were becoming self-sufficient. They were getting involved in all kinds of economies, but the land is what helped keep them alive. Then as more white people were coming, they were pushing the Métis people out west, and they were trying to push everybody out west, right? So a lot of Cree people came out west, a lot of Métis people. So you have a lot of Métis people in Manitoba, you have a lot of Métis people in Saskatchewan, and then finally in Alberta. And so what happened in Alberta was, by then colonization was at its height. They were creating provinces, they were creating reserves, they were sticking people everywhere. And then my ancestors they weren't allowed to live on First Nations, and they weren't allowed to live like in the white communities. So here we are, we're not white, so we don't farm. Like we don't want to farm. We want to like hunt. We want to roam like how we have been. We want to eat moose. We want to eat deer, you know, ducks, all of the stuff. My mushum, for example, he preferred only to eat wild meat. That was how we grew up. That's how he grew up. Like he loved everything. He loved moose, he loved deer, he loved chickens, ducks, anything wild. You go to their house, there was always something boiling on the pot. My cousin, who they raised, he was one of the best hunters in Kikino because he was always harvesting for my mushum. And so being on the land what it means is we're connected to our foods. We're connected to our medicines, to our way of life. I feel who I am. I know who I am because of being on the land. That's how I know who I am. Well, Indigenous people, we have a different worldview of the land. So when I look at the land, I see it. I see everything that's there. I see where the geese come and lay their eggs. I see where the radroot grows. I know where the mint grows. I know where I plant my garden. I know where the deer cross. I know where the fox dens are. I know where the moose hang out, where the coyote dens are. I know where the beaver dams are. So when I look at the land, it's not just trees, it's not just grass, it's an entire village. And I'm just a part of that village. Like I have no more right on this land than everybody else. So when I share this land, like in my yard, I have a fox den. Like I don't see myself as above everything else. It's like, okay, I gotta share the land. And it's interesting because I have been around white people and their worldview is so different of the land. They don't see it that way. They see it as, what could like wanting to put cement everywhere and develop, like that word develop and industrialize, like we can set up an industrial park here. And, and you see some of our people, they have that colonized thinking as well. Like, well, what could we do with this land? Let's develop it, like let's set up a big cement park and all these buildings and we'll go into partnership with industry. But then they don't realize the water tables they impact, all the animals' homes that they're disrupting, So when I see the land, I know that, I'm sharing it with everything.